Welcome to the line. Today we got Cory on the line who has a problem with evil, or he wants to talk about the problem of evil, or maybe we're just two dumb fuck atheists that don't know about the problem of evil. Who fucking knows, but it's sure to be a shit show. Hope y'all have fun. We're going to be starting off tonight with a Satanist named Cory. He's got something that he wants to talk about. What's up there, Cory?
Hey, how's it going?
Going pretty good here. How about you?
Doing great. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the problem of evil to see if it's a good argument or see if it's a bad argument. Me, I kind of go right down the middle, and I say it depends on how far you go.
Okay. Dr. Josh, what do you think about the problem of evil?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this comes up. Skylar Fiction and I did a debate just a couple of nights ago, I think. And it was on, Is Christianity Rational? I think was the title. And, you know, I feel like I was there more for moral support than anything else. But, because Skylar tends to have those things all by himself. But you know, a lot of what we talked about was morality in the Old Testament. You know, so Skylar would say things like, "Is it rational that the God of the Old Testament would create the world, knowing that it would fall, and then wipe everybody out except for 8 people and start over again?" And so we end up talking about passages quite a bit, like 1 Samuel 15 with the Amalekites, or like the conquest of Joshua. Or, you know, as you were talking about things like slavery in the Old Testament laws. And I think that, you know, when I come across it, and certainly I'm not a philosopher and it's definitely not my field of expertise, but it seems to cross paths with me when we talk about how could a just and righteous and perfectly moral and immutable God in the Hebrew Bible, endorse or command practices like this. And so, you know, I think that that's where it crosses paths with me. And I think it's a good argument, honestly, when you're not, again, I don't deal with it so much from the perspective of does God exist, which is usually, I guess, where the problem of evil goes. But it's more like, are we interpreting, if we're more of a conservative, fundamentalist, evangelical, is looking at the God of the Old Testament through that lens really the right way to interpret the text? And of course, I don't think so. So,
and as for me, I think that the problem of evil is good for very specific definitions of God, and for the claim of omnibenevolence, this idea that God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. I think that the problem of evil is a pretty good argument against it. And I guess the way that I think about these arguments is I try to think about the different arguments against, like, you know, the problem of evil. And one of the things that's typically brought up is free will. It's like, well, you know, we have free will, and therefore, you know, evil exists because it's a product of free will in some kind of way. But the way that I guess reason my way around that is just that God could definitely, if he's all-knowing, that is, he could definitely come up with a solution that allows us to retain our free will, but also prevent some evil from happening in the world. Like, typically there's the abuses of, like, the Catholic Church, is something that I generally bring up as an evil that is unnecessary. And I think that God could definitely pop into existence real quick, punch a priest in the face, and then pop out of existence to prevent him from doing, some kind of harm. And, you know, if that was just something about the natural world that happened, that's not God affecting. Like, if I see somebody looking to do evil upon another person, and I punch them in the face anytime they start to do it or think about it or something like that, then, that's not affecting their free will. They still have the free will decision to attempt to do that in the future. They just know that they're going to get punched in the face anytime they attempt to do it. So, I think that there are definitely ways that an omnipotent and omnibenevolent God could, allow free will to exist, but also prevent evil that we commonly find, happening in the world. So, I mean, I think it's good against specific definitions of God, that is.
Same. I try to use like the problem of evil, like the free will, like when they're talking about free will, and they say, well, the only reason there's a hell and stuff is because God have to allow you to have free will, and that was just a result of that. The problem I have with it is usually I think they're putting barriers in front of them. This is an all-powerful God. Why can't he overcome this? And he's an all-knowing God. I mean, this is only it only attacks a specific denomination of Christianity. But I do think it's a good argument to this to point out, hey, these Christians, they're putting barriers in front of them when they're talking about God. Oh, well, why God gives us free will? Well, because we don't just become mindless little robots, And I'd just be like, okay, can God not give us a body and not make us mindless little robots? I mean, they're just always backpedaling to where it just makes until it's nonsensical.
Yeah, I can definitely see it from that perspective. I think that the problem really comes in when they're trying to describe God as, omnibenevolent and omniscient and omnipresent. Like those three things piled on together, I think kind of create with what we know about how reality works, I think it kind of creates a conundrum that you really can't recover from as far as that specific definition of a deity.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, was there anything else that you wanted to pick our brains about tonight?
That was just basically it. I just really wanted to know where y'all standed on the problem of evil and how y'all use it. If you want to say like how you would use it, I don't mind listening.
Okay. Well, Dr. Josh, do you want to give, do you have any thoughts about how you would use the problem of evil, like I guess in a debate or a discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe what I would say about it is ultimately, I feel like in these discussions, when you talk about things like, how an all-powerful and an all-loving being can allow, either situations in which evil will exist or be created, that they ultimately, again, in my experience, will come back to, well, look, Isaiah 55, right? God's ways are higher than our ways. We can't know. God must have had a morally sufficient reason to, for example, commit what we would only call atrocities today. God had this morally sufficient reason, and so even though we can't get to it, there's a reason that God allows this evil. And I think that in the end, that sort of argument, I don't know. Once you get there, I don't know that there's a lot more that I probably won't engage much further, because it's sort of the way out, right? In most of these contexts, when I talk to people, because once you say, well, we can't know it, but God must have it, I think it betrays that you're starting with your conclusion, right? You're starting with, my God, the position that I have, the interpretation that I have of the biblical text, for example, is the right one. And so there is no example where there is no counter to this. There's no defeater, because ultimately I'm going to start with, I'm right. I have to be right. because that's my core belief. And I just don't know that there's getting past that, going down that particular avenue, for me anyway, in my context.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like if you're admitting that, oh, well, God has a morally sufficient reason for doing this, it kind of seems to me, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but it kind of seems to me like you're limiting God and his abilities at that point, just because you can't explain like morally why this would be a good thing. But I typically find that you can use, like the problem of evil or this whole line of thought to kind of, I guess, push your interlocutor into a position where they're going to have to either they're going to have to say uncomfortable things that might get them to really reconsider stuff. Like, when you're talking about the abuses of the Catholic Church, they're going to have to end up either saying, no, that's a horrible thing, and that, is a problem for this whole omnibenevolent idea, or they're going to have to say it was a good thing for those priests to abuse those kids in those types of ways. And so I feel like it's going to be very telling in either way. And as far as the problem of evil in general, I think that it's if you're in a discussion with somebody that is, arguing for like Yahweh or a very specific definition of God that includes omnibenevolence, it can be very useful with how we know our reality works. But aside from that, if you're in a discussion with somebody and they're trying to establish like God is the moral lawgiver or he's the moral foundation, you could possibly use the problem of evil in that particular situation, depending on how the conversation goes. So it could have some application there. But all in all, I typically would bring up problems of evil in order to have the other person think a bit more deeply about what they're saying. Yeah, the actual issues with their particular theological view is how I would use it. But anyways, thank you so much there, Cory, for your call, and I hope that you call in again in the future.
No problem. Yeah,
all right.
Next time I'll bring up beliefs.
Okay. Sounds awesome. We'll see you later there, Cory.
Yeah. No problem.
All right. Bye. All right. First call down went really good. Now, Dr. Josh, I saw your debate, between you and Skylar and the other two guys, and I really didn't find their entire way of dealing with everything that y'all were saying was all that reasonable, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the defining moment was toward the end of the back and forth, the open dialogue, where and listen, I like Stuart, so it was Stuart and Cliff Knechtley, and I really like Stuart, and I think I probably like Cliff as well. I feel like our interactions have been limited to these debates, and it tends to get a little heated. But the thing that Stuart ultimately said to Skylar, Skylar said, like, the God of the Old Testament drowned innocent babies, right? That's what he said. That's what he did. And Stuart's response ultimately was to say, listen, I don't care if the God of the Old Testament ate babies. If Jesus died and rose again, then you have to deal with that. And it was almost as if the response the entire debate was, if I'm right about what I believe, then I'm right. And it's like, yes, that's true. If the Babylonians were correct, then Marduk, was the real God, and so then their belief structure would have been sound. Or if the Assyrians were right, then Asher was the one true God, or at least the most powerful national deity. So yes, I mean, if they were right, then they were right. But but making the argument, well, if Jesus died and rose from the dead, then Christianity is true, and all these other things follow. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm okay with that. I haven't, you know, I'm sure there are actually some problems with that, but let's assume that there aren't. And that's a pretty big if. Yeah. So I just don't know if that's the way to come about these arguments, and to say something like, I don't care if the God of the Old Testament did any of these atrocious things. It's like,
yeah, it seemed like a big preachy session for their side. Just basically, saying, "Oh, well, my Bible says," is kind of, how I took it.